There's no doubt about it that humans have left quite the irreversible and permanent mark on Earth as a whole. We've already sucked this whole place dry of most of its continents and containments that it could, give us. So, makes you wonder, in a future, what if humans leave? I mean, what if they left for a different planet, like out of our solar system completely? And it makes you wonder, well, if they ever did, what would happen to the animals? I mean, there's no way we'd be able to take all the animals, and of course, I mean, scientists would probably let a few stay back anyways, mostly all. We'd probably take only the important animals we truly care about, like dogs and cats and other stuff like that, and probably monkeys as well, but, you know. But really, what happened to the animals? Well, that's what I'm really here to tell you about. Okay, let's go into it.
What?
It's a metaphor.
The chromiums are next. Basically, here's how the chromiums work. They're lizards. Martian lizards. Now, for the record, all of the Martian creatures either came from the ocean under Mars or just came from the ground. For Pete's sake, we're just going to say that they came from the ground and not the ocean. Most of them did, at least. And basically, these creatures, since they've adapted inside the rocks, they've become used to rocks and even use the rocks as sustenance. Many of the creatures here have developed such tough teeth to the point where they're able to eat rocks. That's why the flies lick salt and minerals and other things off the rocks, because it's healthy for them, and their body is, well, a rock-eating processing machine. So, yeah, same with all the other animals who eat rocks. These guys are kind of like raptors, except if they're like 10 times smaller. They can carry like 50 times their body weight, of course, though, just like any ant. These things aren't very special, other than the fact they eat rocks and, well, they're, very small and they're lizards and whatever. But there is one attribute to them that makes them somewhat interesting, to say the least. These creatures are able to dig deep underground and make little burrows, kind of like any ant colony would. So, yeah, there's that. Anyways, next creature. The first creatures we'll be taking a look at is one I had a blast designing. These guys are the Martius muscipula, which is Latin for Martian flytrap. Basically, how these guys work is, well, they're like fly traps, except they can move around freely. They're under, well, like this fleshy robe-like thing. They have a bunch of little tendrils that help them move around, like octopus, I guess you could say. Now, the thing that makes these guys cool is that, well, when they stand still, what they can do is they let off a scent that attracts, well, flies, Martian flies, of course. And these Martian flies, attracted to the scent, try and get a little nibble out of it. And then they open up and start catching the flies by using their hands. Their hands are filled with little points and spikes and little sticky stuff, sap on their hands. And they can easily trap the flies and then lick it off their hands. And they can use their tongue to lick the flies just out of the air generally. Oh god, my throat, ow! Okay. Most of these usually stick to either around each other or away from each other in order to learn more. These creatures are intelligent enough to know how to share food and, well, communicate to others to tell them to go to certain places. They're also intelligent enough to know where, flies usually go during hibernation season. These guys usually try and gorge themselves down on flies the best they can, because during hibernation season, for them, they need to have a lot of fat stored inside them in order to be able to live through all of that. They lose 10 times their body weight during hibernation season than before, which is why they need to, get as much as they can. And for the flies, well, there's nothing really special about them. The only thing that really makes them special is that they eat rocks. Well, not really. They don't really eat rocks. They lick the salt off rocks. Other than that, just like They're just like flies, basically. There's really nothing special about them besides they're red and they lick salt off rocks and stuff. The beacons are next, spelled like this, by the way. The beacons are tall, lanky little figures with lights as one giant eye and a beak. These guys have one hind leg and they jump around. Since Mars has lower gravity than Earth but higher gravity than the moon, they take, advantage of the floaty Mars gravity and, well, jump along. It would be hard for a creature their size with one leg to jump around on Earth like they do, which is perfect for them. Most creatures with low gravitational pull planets and zero gravity, whatever, they're gonna get tall and lanky because they're gonna feel really lightweight and they're gonna have no weight at all. Now, the thing that makes these guys special is that they're actually carnivores mostly. They only eat chromemes and flies, but that's about it. They don't eat anything else. In fact, they're actually a friend with a few animals. Very certain animals, though. The Caesars, or Snatchers, because that rolls off the tongue better for short, is the apex predator of Martians so far during this time period. What they do is simple. They are fungi-like creatures that come out of the ground of the Martian soil, and once they are born, they shoot their seeds out of their fingers, or finger-like appendages. These seeds act as fingernails for them to be able to easily dig out of the ground, until they, then they can shoot them out and boom, they'll spread around and wind will take them and they'll be able to grow more diversely around different areas. These guys mostly feed on beacons, chromemes, and koya badgers, which is a creature I'll get to later. They have a mainly carnivorous diet and eat nothing but meat and other creatures. The way these guys work is they stay down on the ground, blending in with the Martian soil with their patterns and fancy colors. And then, eventually, once they detect a disturbance in the soil, for example, a creature rolling or walking by, they snap up about at the speed of a race car, and then, well, they'll bite and scratch and claw and try to grab onto you, also lunging at about the speed of your average race car, usually. And if they get a good grip of you, unless you're a koya badger or beacon, then you're kind of screwed. Beacons have developed a, defense mechanism against these guys. Their giant leg will basically constantly kick and kick and kick into the creature's, well, throat area until they eventually vomit them out. They'll kick very fast, super fast, in fact, and it activates their, well, stomach repulsion and they'll throw up and whatever, but that gives the beacons a chance to escape. The beacons have adapted to this because their creatures were constantly getting snapped up. However, one good thing about the beacons is due to their immense size, it does take a while for the snatchers to even eat them up, so they have lots of time to hit and make them throw up. However, young beacons are usually not very good at this and are doomed by the start. Koya badgers are much more interesting, however. These creatures, they don't have legs. They've developed a wheel-like system on, well, both sides of them. They roll around the Mars soil with ease. Their wheel is kind of like covered in a tough skin shell type thing, and that's why they never really experience any pain. When these guys are met with a snatcher, they'll do the following. They have, well, kind of like a fly, with their giant two compound eyes, see everything in slow motion. How this works? Don't ask me. Flies can do it. I don't know. How this works, though, is since they're seeing everything in slow motion, they're able to see these creatures easily, able to snatch at them, and at this point, they're able to usually take big gulps of air, and then once they do that, they'll use the air that they had stored in a gland specialized for that whole purpose and shoot it out of the bottom of their body and kick into the, well, snatcher aggressively at top speeds, and this will usually either break their bones or deter them enough to not mess with them anymore. Usually, in most cases, this kills them due to the immense pressure even being applied on them generally. The troglodyte apoid, also known as gorilla, if you want to be more specific, is, well, what happens to monkeys after we leave. Basically, monkeys will continue our cycle. They're already close enough to humans to the point where if you give them more time to evolve, they'll probably turn into us at some point. This goes for all monkey types that basically have the same intelligence, such as chimpanzees, orangutans, silverbacks, and other things like that. They'll eventually turn into us. They'll get off their hands and finally move on their hind legs for long periods of time without having to go back to crawling around like four-legged freaks and more. They have much since calmed down from their angry terrestrial behavior and have more taken a sly approach to life as they focus more time into surviving and feeding their family and loving the pack and, making friends with other types of monkeys. Very different from the girls we have nowadays. These creatures also seem to be smart enough in order to make spears, which, if you didn't know, chimpanzees can already do this in modern day. They make spears to get little freaks that they eat that usually hide in trees out of the trees. They'll poke and stab to make them run out of it. Usually this is just a way for chimpanzees to eat, but it's pretty freaky how close they can do that. Anyways, yeah, these are just what happens. As you can see, this gorilla in this image is exploring an abandoned city left behind by humans, with jungles taking it back. As with no humans, the trees don't have to be cut down, and they can finally grow to their full extent. The next creature is a shark zen. Shark zens are mostly, sharks. They've evolved to finally emerge from the water and be mostly land-built, like kind of a dinosaur-type creature. They can still swim in water, but they're not as good as they used to be, as they're slowly but surely becoming more land, revolvent. They still have that classic fin, but it's, going away, kind of. They've gotten rid of how their original tail looked for a more reptilian-esque tail, and they've grown wide, beefy legs to help them move around the harsh landscape. Also, claws, because why not? These guys are still carnivores, as usual, and hunt down, mostly tiny bugs, and they'll wait at waters for fish, because, they used to eat fish all the time, so why don't they still do it? These creatures have developed better eyesight and still have many attributes that a shark does. For example, their infinite amount of teeth that every time they lose a tooth, they can probably just regrow it. And, other stuff like that. There's also the click-beaked sea turtle. These guys are what happens when a sea turtle has had enough of the pesky vultures messing around with it and are finally more reluctant and ready to walk on land. The way these guys work is that millions of years, their flippers, weren't very much working, helping them get around easier. So as they evolved, they probably got better, and, more better at walking, and eventually they, got little legs. They're still very good at swimming, however, because when they swim, they're able to take away from their body weight by inhaling, and they feel lightweight just like they used to. They developed large, heavy bird-like beaks in order to peck away vultures while they're trying to lay their eggs, which, for the record, is, very oddly common. Vultures always want to take a little bite of eggs when they're trying to lay their little babies, so yeah, they're much better at digging the nests for their eggs as well with these feet, because instead of flippers, they use these kind of like bulldozer, whatever. One of those claw thingies I forgot the name of that Cat owns. There's also the jelly blubber. These guys have learned to basically get off out of the water and go near shores. They still swim in water better than they walk on land, but they can still do it. They've, gotten eyes now, and in order to protect themselves from the harsh sunlight that they've never experienced before, they developed a fat, thick layer of blubber on top of their head. They act kind of a fleshy shield from gamma and sun rays drying out their skin before they can go back in the water. Usually this blubber is always dried out and crusty, but they never feel it. It's not that actually, like, it's not very harmful. Most of the blubber is actually full of water in a way. Dolphins, due to climate changes, dolphins were forced to move out of their natural environment and actually go onto land. They're more amphibian creatures now. They're, the size of any normal dolphin, as you do. However, they've developed a set of frog-like legs, and their fins are slowly disappearing. They're in the middle stages of changing, so this is why they look a bit odd. The only thing you could really tell if the only thing you could tell that they were still a dolphin is the little pores on their head, their beak, and the noises they make, and their fins, but that's about it. If you got rid of all of those, it just looked like a frog with weird, long head. The bullhawk is what happens when you let a freakishly large frog get even more freakishly large. These guys are about the same size as a bulldog, and they're way more aggressive. These guys, they like to hop around as they do. However, they're developing more, let's say, better hands. This is something that you can see in many dinosaurs beyond evolution from the present to the future. Like in the past, how velociraptors slowly got more handish, and they were able to pick up stuff and do whatever. Most velociraptors changed to this so they could grab prey easier and eat them straight from the ground like they, love to do. These bull hoppers, aren't very harmful to anything unless you're a fly. If you're a fly, then run for your life because these things will eat you. Crablets, despite the name making them sound like a tiny little creature, are actual freaks of nature. Crabs have finally evolved enough to go completely waterbound due to climate changes. These crabs have also developed more meaty claws, as most of its prey is getting stronger due to climate changes as well, forcing them to get tougher skin and whatnot, so they've got more muscly claws and stuff. They've got a shark-like fin to help them swim around easier, and their eyesight has developed a lot better. Other than that, it's just your average crab. The star squid is basically what if you let a starfish advance enough to the point where they have enough intelligence like a squid. The star squid are, your average replacement for octopuses and stuff. They still have the attributes that any normal starfish does, and they still love eating their favorite food, morsels, which haven't changed because they really haven't seen the point to change. Next up is the octoids. Octoids are octopuses and squids and whatever. People often overlook the intelligence that octopuses have, and in the future, they've most likely gotten rid of the tentacles for more frog, amphibian-like feet, however, still have the several appendages. They're also smart enough to finally develop weapons and sticks, because it doesn't take a very smart creature to, come up with the conclusion that putting one sharp thing on another thing will be better. Penguins, also known as, your penguin, is what happens when you let a penguin get to its fullest, biggest form. These penguins have finally had enough and are able to graze the icy lands better than ever. They've gotten rid of their fatty tissue-like appendages and waddling and whatnot, and instead gone for a more ostrich-like approach. They've gotten taller and are probably about the same size as a doorway compared to your average man, and their babies aren't any better. Their babies are about the size of your average PC monitor or so. The babies has also finally stopped being made and laid in eggs, and they have moved on to a less eggish approach. Penguins have longer beaks for easier fish catching and such, and their fins are still there. Well, not really fins, but flippers to help them swim easier, as you do. Most people think penguins would become whales, and yeah, that's a reasonable approach, but I always felt like that wouldn't make that much sense. always liked the idea of them becoming more giant and bird-like this image. This is what inspired me to make them like this.